welcome to a very special episode of Dreamcatchers. I'm your host, Lauren McCumber. Normally, Dreamcatchers is a show that showcases Kahnawake youth talents and successes in order to inspire other Kahnawake youth to pursue their dreams. But today's episode, since we have Diayage Alfred here with us, is to talk about the Indian Act and the recent Crown First Nations gathering that took place on January 24th of this year. So let's start off right on that. So the Crown First Nations gathering, it was based on the Indian Act. And they discussed that. What exactly was going on with that situation?
Yeah, I mean, it got a lot of attention, but it wasn't really that significant. It was, I think it got a lot of attention because of what was going on in that community up in northern Ontario, Attawapiskat. And everybody was all upset because they saw what the real living conditions were for hundreds of Native communities in Canada. And so this one got a lot of attention. The government had to kind of respond with its own propaganda. And the propaganda was, we're working on the problem, you know, and we're going to meet with First Nations, and we respect First Nations people. And so they set up this big gathering, supposedly where all the chiefs were going to come in. I think their phrase was something like rebooting the relationship or something like that. And nothing got done, and it was just another photo op. Unfortunately, you know, I think the politics in Canada today are that Native people have agreed, on the whole, Native people have agreed that they're Canadian citizens, that they're going to work within the system, and that the only thing that really needs to be fixed is our standard of living is not as high as white people. That's across the board, across Canada. And so the AFN represents that, and most Native leaders have that in mind, and so they're looking for money. They're not looking for recognition of their rights or getting their lands back, or maybe the cultural problem of not being able to practice their ways on the land. None of these things get discussed at all. It's always about money, and it's always about programs and things like that. And so it's kind of a charade.
Okay.
You know? Yeah.
Well, despite the fact it being a charade, it did bring up issues. It did bring attention to the Indian Act in particular. What exactly was Harper saying? That he wanted to collaborate with Indigenous people? He didn't want to just uproot the tree and leave this gaping hole? What was that all about?
Bunch of mixed metaphors that didn't quite work. But really, you know, you had the national chief of the first AFN, Sean Atleo, saying we need to reset this relationship, and we need to get rid of the Indian Act. You know, the Indian Act is the problem. That's what they were saying. Harper saying, no, I'm never getting rid of the Indian Act. We're going to maybe do things differently under the Indian Act. But Harper and every prime minister and every Canadian politician can get rid of the Indian Act because it's the only thing that gives them the authority to deal with our people. And it keeps us on reserves, and it keeps us off our land. You know, so we have traditional lands and territories, this whole country basically, none of which has ever been surrendered. But the Indian Reserve System keeps us living here. And so what's done with the land that we're not living on? White people are living on it, corporations are making money off it, and the Canadian government's collecting taxes. And so the Indian Act's like crucial to the Canadian economy and the Canadian way of life, really. So it's kind of silly to think that, you know, Harper would say, sure, we're going to get rid of the Indian Act. That's never going to happen unless we force it. So they're never voluntarily going to give up what they stole, right? No criminal has ever voluntarily given up what they stole. So unless Native people demand it and organize, it's not going to happen. Not through a meeting like this anyway. We're all nice sitting around negotiating.
Yeah. So what did First Nations people have to say about Harper's suggestion to collaborate, to work in creative ways?
Gauging the reaction of First Nations people around the country, they all laughed and, you know, were cynical as usual. First Nation chiefs said what they have to say, which is, you know, we're happy that the possibility of a new relationship is going to be emerging, and all of that kind of political stuff. But like as it broke down, as of today, you know, what you have is a group of people who believe in this kind of collaboration with government to develop the economy, to participate in like logging, mining, dams, and all this stuff to get more money and get their share, hydro projects and all that. Then you have other nations who are saying, no, it is about the land. We want our land back, basically, and we want to make our own decisions. And so there's a big split in the AFN between like British Columbia natives who are working on this collaborative approach, and then the rest of the country basically who's saying, No, we need to take a stronger stand on the rights.
What's Quebec's stance? Quebec Indigenous people.
The First Nations in Quebec, ours included, our band council included, are opposed to the AFN right now in its agenda.
And why is that?
Because they don't believe in collaborating as a partner under the terms that are being put forward here. So the collaboration as a partner, according to the government, is this kind of joint development where natives are kind of under the province and under the feds and get a share of and are consulted in this process where, there's still this idea on the prairies of the treaty, meaning two separate, and of course here, our people and Akwesasne about, the Gaswanta and Turo of partnership on that basis, and the Canadian government's not talking about anything like that right now. But yet, Chief Sean Atleo and the AFN is being led in that direction of partnership as kind of a little junior partner in the white people's development of our land.
Mm-hmm. And why exactly does this approach not work?
It doesn't work because that's not the problem that we're facing as Native people. It solves the white people's problem. The white people's problem is that we're in the way. Right? Native rights are in the way, and Native people are in the way, and especially when some radical Natives say, well, I'm going to stand up and defend my land, or I'm going to go pick medicines, or I'm going to hunt, and it's wrong for you to build this dam here, and I'm not going to let you do it. That's a big problem. And so it solves the white problem to have them say, okay, we'll stop doing that as long as you give us jobs. So we're trading our heritage and our land in order to have a job. Okay, that works for them. It doesn't work for us because the problem of colonization, like the problem of history, and the reason there's so much violence and psychological problems in Native communities across Canada is not because they don't have a job. It's because they're separated from their land and their history and their culture. And they need to reconnect to that. And none of this addresses any of that. Mm-hmm. So, I think a lot of Native people know that, even if the band council maybe is not directly saying that, Native people are never going to be satisfied with just the job. They want on the whole, Native people want the right and want to be respected for the fact that this is their country, and mm-hmm. they have the right to use the land to sustain themselves, not only for money, mm-hmm. but spiritually and otherwise too.
Yeah. In your opinion, what's Kahnawake stance on this situation?
Our stance has some integrity in the sense that we don't really deal with the government except on a nation-to-nation basis, like Kahnawake as a whole. Mm-hmm. The Band Council's job is not to represent that, though. Like, the Band Council exists as a liaison between the government and the community. So the Band Council, by definition, has to be pragmatic, right? It has to say, well, what can be done in this situation that we exist in now? So it's the responsibility really of the people to push the Band Council into a position of representing more that nation-to-nation perspective. Because right now, I think we face a situation where it's pretty hostile out there, to the whole idea. You got a government that's made up of basically all racists.
Mm-hmm. So earlier you mentioned the only way to get rid of the Indian Act is to stand up against it. What would we have to do exactly?
Well, that's a tough question because, of course, the Indian Act is the vehicle by which money is delivered to us. Mm-hmm. You think about the budget of this community in terms of just the basic services and everything we expect now. Whether you're traditional or Band Council or don't care, you expect stuff to be provided for you as a person living here. That all comes to the Band Council. And if we took the political position, if everybody in the Band Council said, yeah, right, it's colonial, I'm not going to participate anymore, I'm withdrawing, and nobody voted in the Band Council and everybody ignored it, what would happen? The government would say, okay, you don't want our money, we're not going to give it to you. So the point I'm making is that we have to have the ability to sustain ourselves economically and physically, and just in terms of our food sustenance and all that, before you can actually say, I'm going to go to battle mm-hmm. with the government over this issue. So there's a capacity building that is so important. Food security, physical security, all of these things are essential if you're going to act as a nation. And we were on that path before, but I think now people are kind of thinking more in terms of a business relationship with the outside. Mm-hmm. And